That was the big unknown, and I guess the big frustration for McLaren on the weekend is they never really understood how fast they were or whether they've got a problem for the rest of the year. You know, clearly Red Bull have caught up with them, that they know. Are they clearly still in front of Mercedes, who was on the podium? Well, they think they are, but, you know, I'm not quite sure. And I'm not certain that Singapore's going to prove it in terms of the car. But Jamie's absolutely right, is that Oscar is going to have to come back, and I'd be interested to see what he does, you know, to sort of clear his head. But I liked the way, didn't you guys, afterwards, Oscar was essentially saying, you know, I should have known there wasn't going to be grip on the first lap. I shouldn't have known not to be flustered, not that he admitted he was trying to recover from the jump start, and I should have made the jump start. They were all kind of, you know, beginner's mistakes, and he knows that, and we'll see whether he makes them again or has a clean run into the championship.
Yeah, I don't think that McLaren, actually, one of the traits of the McLaren is not at its best in a straight line and with the short corners that you get in Baku. That's one of the traits of the car. But also those that went from medium to hard, the problem that they had then was the undercut didn't work, did it? Because it took a couple of laps for the hard to switch on. Whereas if you went the other way round, it appeared the overcut and the undercut worked.
It seemed a bit like the overcut was almost stronger because there was negative degradation on the hard tyre. As the fuel came off, those on the hard tyre, Max and George, I don't know how much they were managing, were able to go quicker and quicker at the end of their stints. So then by the time they went and put the medium on at the very end, they'd already gained quite a lot of track position. So that definitely seemed like the favourable strategy. That said, I think, yeah, the damage for Lando was done on Saturday. I agree with Ted completely. I think I don't think he had a race car to be able to have such a performance advantage or pace advantage to just cut through the field and find himself up in the top three. But that's the worry for them. I think they can't afford in races like that to have like a bit of a mishap in qualifying. We saw last year Lando have a mishap in qualifying where he got the yellow flag and he was still able to recover a lot of positions. Now the field is so tight, you can't really afford that anymore.
Also temperature, when it's cold, as it was brisk, McLaren don't do quite so well in the cool conditions. Mercedes do, so we'll see what happens in Singapore. But then there's Red Bull. You know, we've only seen a kind of low-winged, low-downforce version, Simon. And if Max can come back and complete the hat trick in Singapore, then wow, then McLaren are in a bit of trouble.
Can we wax lyrical then again about Max as we've moved on nicely to that? His second Grand Slam of 6 that he's got. He's, in terms of numbers of Grand Slam, by that I mean pole fastest lap, leading every lap and winning the race. He's got 2 of those in the last 2 races, 6 in total, along with Lewis Hamilton. Only Jim Clark has got more than that. Gap to Piastri, 69 points. Gap to Lando Norris, 44 points. If you're those two, are your tweeters going slightly here? Are you thinking, oh, here he comes, quadruple world champion? Because he's back, and it was just another brilliant performance Saturday into Sunday. And every second question we got in the build up to this podcast is he in the championship again?
I mean, no notes for Max. It was phenomenal. I think that's obviously where he thrives, in those tricky conditions, but still they've clearly found something with the car, which is great because that's given him sort of a car that he can compete at the front. But even when it's tough, he always seems to excel, and that's what makes him, in my opinion, in the current crop, one of the greatest we have. And I think it's incredible to see. It's interesting now, the title fight, because it's a lot of points. I think it's 69 points away. I think there's just under 200 left. So it's a big ask. But I would never rule him out. And also, he's not ruling himself out. He kind of smiled about it at the weekend and said, it's a lot of points, but never say never. And I like that. I think he's got this sort of spring in his step again. I think he saw this sort of motivated sort of lull in his atmosphere and vibe earlier in the year. And now it's game time again. He's got that kind of Spring and Estefany wants to go after it.
At the start of the weekend, he said, no, I'm not in the championship.
Fueling the progress of Oracle Red Bull Racing, Fiona McEwen on life as a racing technical advisor. From performing chemical analyses to coordinating logistics, Fiona McEwen's work with ExxonMobil as a racing technical advisor plays a crucial part in the operations of Oracle Red Bull Racing, accelerating their progress in Formula One. When you think about chemistry, your first thought may not be of particularly exciting job opportunities, but it would be naive to think that's always the case. When she decided to pursue a degree in chemistry with drug discovery, Fiona's expectations were not exactly of an exciting career path. After graduation, she took a job with ExxonMobil in an oil refinery, where she performed chemical analyses on commercial fuels and lubricants. ExxonMobil is the fuel supplier of Oracle Red Bull Racing and, 4 years ago, an opportunity came up to work trackside with the team. Fiona went for it, and the rest is history. I must admit, motorsport was never a dream of mine, she tells Females in Motorsport. But this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It would be such a waste to miss out. Even though she has always had an interest in F1, since taking this job, Fiona admits she now lives and breathes the sport. While she is only working trackside on half the races of the season, her weekends off still revolve around watching F1, and sometimes, she admits, getting in touch with her colleagues trackside to know everything that's going on. In her role as racing technical advisor, Fiona works trackside to analyze the car's fuel and lubricants, and coordinates the logistics of their shipping. She is not just crucial to the team's operations, but to their success. She not only makes sure that the cars run smoothly on track with her analytical chemistry work, but, with the planning and coordination of fuel shipping, that they race at all. Thanks to a lab mobile unit that travels to the different race locations, the team is able to analyze several aspects of the fuel and oils, such as their density, viscosity, and chemical composition. Every component of the car has to follow precise regulations, imposed by the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile, FIA, and the fuel is no exception. At the start of the weekend, all kegs of fuel are analyzed before being handed to the team, checking that it meets the parameters set by the FIA. The chemical composition of the fuel is also tested after every transfer, to avoid possible contaminations that could result in a penalty for the team when FIA officials sample the fuel later in the weekend. In theory, there should be no issues, but you have to be careful. Fiona says. While fuel analyses are required by regulations, testing the lubricants is essential to check the health of the car, quite like a blood test. All the oils, engine, gearbox, and hydraulic, are thoroughly analyzed. Any anomalous friction or parameter outside the normal range could be an early warning sign of problems causing a mechanical failure on track, major or minor. But in a sport like F1, where it's all about the smallest of margins, nothing is insignificant. Even the slightest issue can make the difference between winning or losing. On the logistics side, Fiona's role is to coordinate with DHL on the shipment of the supply of fuel and lubricants necessary for the race weekend to the different race locations. This is the part of the job that definitely can present the most challenges. The fuel and lubricants are shipped by sea freight, months before the Grand Prix, but unexpected issues can come up right before the race weekend. On a couple of occasions, the weekend before the Singapore Grand Prix, the ship couldn't dock because of the fog, and we had to fly out another batch of fuel and lubricants at the last minute, she says. At times we have had issues with strikes in the countries where the fuels were supposed to arrive. And, a couple of years ago, Mexico banned the import of all fuels just a few weeks before the race, but thankfully, ours was already there. It's no one's fault that these things happen, and it's out of everyone's hands. We need to find the best possible